She didn't show up to the wedding, and everyone decided they knew why. Hi, my name is Emily Harper. I'm 29 years old and I work as a marketing coordinator at a small publishing company in Boston. Last spring, something happened in my family that changed the way I see silence and strength. It started with a wedding invitation, or maybe I should say an announcement. My cousin Olivia Harper was getting married at a luxury venue in Newport. The whole family was buzzing for months. Group chats exploded with dress, photos, menu tastings, floral, themes, and pre-wedding brunch plans. And in the middle of all that excitement was my grandmother, Margaret Maggie Harper, 78 years old, soft-spoken, always neatly dressed. The kind of woman who ironed pillowcases and still mailed handwritten birthday cards. She had raised half of us at some point in our childhoods. When my aunt went through a divorce, Grandma moved in to help with Olivia. When my dad lost his job, she paid our electricity bill quietly and never mentioned it again. But when Olivia's wedding came around, Grandma didn't attend, and that single absence became louder than the ceremony itself. It began at the rehearsal dinner. "Can you believe she's not coming?" my aunt whispered loud enough for 3 tables to hear. "She's still bitter about the past," someone replied. "I guess some people can't stand seeing others happy." The assumptions piled up like centerpieces. By the wedding day, the narrative had already been written. Grandma was jealous. Grandma was stubborn. Grandma wanted attention. I remember standing near the dessert table, watching relatives shake their heads in disappointment. She always had pride issues, one of my uncles said. No one called her. No one asked her. They just decided. The truth. Grandma never said a single negative word about the wedding. When I visited her 2 days later, at her small white house on Maple Street, she was sitting in her rocking chair, knitting a pale blue scarf. "Did you have fun?" she asked gently. I stared at her. "Grandma, why didn't you go?" She paused just slightly before smiling. "Oh, sweetheart, it was a busy day for everyone. I didn't want to trouble them." That answer didn't feel right. I pressed further. "But you're her grandmother." She adjusted her glasses. "Yes." "Then why—" "Emily," she interrupted softly. "Sometimes presence isn't requested. It's simply assumed." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. A week later I found out. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No confrontation. Just a small accidental discovery. My mom had left her phone on the kitchen counter during Sunday lunch. Olivia's wedding group chat was still open. I wasn't snooping, at least not intentionally. But one message caught my eye. Olivia had written months earlier. "Can someone let Grandma know about the wedding? I don't really have space for extra guests, but she should be informed." Informed, not invited. I scrolled further. Another message from my aunt. "I'll call her and tell her the date. No need to send a formal invite. No RSVP card. No seat assignment. No ceremony program listing her name. Just a phone call." And suddenly, Grandma's words made sense. Presence isn't requested. She hadn't skipped the wedding. She had simply understood her place in it, or rather her lack of one. Later that evening, I drove back to Maple Street. She was in the kitchen baking cornbread. "Grandma," I said carefully, "did Olivia send you an invitation?" She didn't look surprised. "No." "Did she ask you personally to come?" She placed the mixing bowl down slowly. She told me the date over the phone. Said she hoped the weather would be nice. My chest tightened. "That's not an invitation." Grandma wiped her hands on her apron. "It was information," she said calmly. "And information does not equal inclusion." There was no bitterness in her voice. Just clarity. I felt angry. Furious, actually. How could they treat you like that after everything you've done? Grandma walked to the window and looked out at her rose bushes. "Emily, kindness should never be a transaction. But you deserved." She turned to me, eyes steady. "Deserving and receiving are 2 different things." Silence filled the room. Then she added something I'll never forget. "I will never beg for a seat at a table I helped build." That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment from the wedding, the speeches, the laughter, the dancing, and I realized something chilling. Grandma's absence hadn't been accidental. It had been convenient. An elderly woman who might need assistance, who might speak too long, who might disrupt the aesthetic. She didn't fit the picture-perfect narrative, so they edited her out. The next family gathering was tense. Word had spread that I knew. My aunt cornered me near the buffet table. "Your grandmother overreacted," she said defensively. "She knew she was welcome." "Was she?" I asked calmly. "Did she have a seat?" "Well, we had limited capacity." "So you chose capacity over courtesy." Her face hardened. She could have just shown up. I thought of Grandma's quiet dignity. "No," I replied. She couldn't. That night I asked Grandma something difficult. "Did it hurt?" She sat in her rocking chair again, knitting needles clicking rhythmically. "Yes," she admitted softly. That single word felt heavier than any argument. But hurt doesn't require a reaction, she continued. Sometimes dignity is simply knowing when not to attend. Weeks passed. The gossip died down. Life resumed. But something had shifted in me. I began noticing how often people confuse pride with self-respect. How often silence is mistaken for guilt. How often exclusion is disguised as oversight. Grandma never confronted Olivia. Never posted a passive-aggressive message. Never corrected anyone's assumptions. She chose quiet pride over loud humiliation. And in doing so, she taught me more about strength than any speech could. 2 months later, something unexpected happened. Olivia stopped by Grandma's house. I wasn't there, but Grandma told me about it. She brought leftover wedding photos, she said. And she apologized. I froze, really. Grandma nodded. She said she didn't realize how it looked, that she assumed I'd understand. And did you? Grandma smiled gently. I understood perfectly, but understanding doesn't erase impact. And that's where this story truly begins. Because what we later discovered in Grandma's old diary changed everything we thought we knew, and revealed that her absence from that wedding was not the first time she had quietly stepped back. It was simply the most visible. The apology came with flowers, but the truth had already bloomed elsewhere. Hi, my name is Emily Harper. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a marketing coordinator at a publishing company in Boston. If you listen to You Know My Grandmother, Margaret Maggie Harper skipped my cousin Olivia's wedding. Everyone called her bitter. Everyone assumed she was holding on to old grudges. But they were wrong, because what we found later proved this wasn't about one wedding. It was about a pattern. A month after Olivia's visit and apology, Grandma fell ill. Nothing dramatic at first, just fatigue, dizziness, a small fall in her garden while trimming her roses. I started visiting more often after work. I'd drive from Boston to Maple Street every Thursday, evening bringing groceries and staying for tea. One rainy night as wind pressed. Against the window, she asked me to retrieve an old wooden box from her closet. It's time you read it, she said. Inside were journals, dozens of them, neatly dated, carefully stored. Why me, I asked. Because you ask questions, she replied softly. That night I took the box home. I didn't expect what I would find. The first few entries were ordinary. Grocery list, church notes, reflections on weather. Then I reached an entry dated 15 years ago. The year my aunt divorced. The year Grandma moved in to help raise Olivia. She had written, "Today I was told not to sit at the front during Olivia's school recital. Parents only. I understand. I will sit in the back." Another entry. Olivia won her spelling bee. They thanked her mother publicly. That is right. But I did stay up every night practicing words with her. Another. I paid for the summer math camp anonymously. It is better this way. My throat tightened. Page after page revealed a quiet history of stepping back. Not because she wasn't wanted, but because she wasn't prioritized. Then I found the entry about the wedding. It was short. Painfully short. Olivia called today. She shared her wedding date. Said space is limited. I congratulated her warmly. I will not attend. Love does not require proximity. No anger. No resentment. Just decision. I closed the journal and stared at the wall. All those years she had been present, but gently repositioned. Moved from the center to the edge. From the front row to the back. From acknowledgement to anonymity. And she accepted it not because she lacked value, but because she refused to demand it. The next Sunday, the entire family gathered at my aunt's house in Cambridge for a post-wedding brunch. Grandma wasn't feeling well enough to attend. But I went, and I carried the journals in my bag. At some point during dessert, someone made a comment again. It's sad she couldn't let go of her pride, my uncle muttered. That was it. I stood up. Can I read something, I asked? The table quieted. Before anyone could object, I opened the journal and began reading entries aloud. Not dramatically, not accusingly, just factually. About the recital seat, the spelling bee, the anonymous tuition payment, the wedding entry. Silence thickened with every word. No one interrupted, because there was nothing to argue with. These weren't opinions. They were timestamps. Proof of quiet love. My aunt's face turned pale. Olivia looked down at her plate. Finally, my mother spoke softly. She never told us. She didn't need to, I replied, because that was the point. Grandma never weaponized her sacrifices. She never used them as leverage. She simply gave and stepped aside. After brunch, Olivia pulled me aside. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask, I answered gently. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought she didn't care about formalities. She doesn't, I said, but she does care about being chosen. That evening, Olivia drove to Maple Street. This time, not with leftover photos, but with a printed wedding album, and something else, an empty photo frame. She sat beside Grandma's bed. I saved a seat, she said quietly. Grandma looked confused. Olivia placed the empty frame on the bedside table. For you, she explained. So, I remember that sometimes absence is a reflection not of bitterness, but of boundaries. Grandma reached for her hand, and for the first time since the wedding, she cried. Not loudly, just enough. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in the family dynamic. Not dramatically, but noticeably. People began calling her directly, not informing, inviting. They asked her opinions during gatherings. They seated her at the center table. Small gestures, but meaningful. And Grandma, she never mentioned the journals again, never said I told you so, never used the moment to gain influence. She simply resumed her gentle rhythm of life. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through her living room curtains, I asked her something. Why didn't you ever confront them? She smiled faintly. Because confrontation demands energy, and I preferred peace. But weren't you tired of being overlooked? She looked at me thoughtfully. Emily, exclusion only diminishes you if you internalize it. I wrote that sentence down later, because it changed me. A few days later, Grandma's health worsened. Doctors said her heart was weakening. The family gathered more frequently now. Ironically, the woman once sidelined had become the emotional center. People hovered around her, apologized again, thanked her, acknowledged her sacrifices. She accepted it all with grace. But I noticed something subtle. She never acted surprised, as if she had always known this day would come, as if dignity is patient. The last time I sat alone with her, she squeezed my hand. Do not chase rooms that don't open, she whispered. Build your own table. I nodded, fighting tears. And if someone forgets to invite you, she smiled, wish them well, and stay home with your peace. 3 days later, we lost her, and the house on Maple Street felt unbearably quiet. Her lessons echoed louder than any wedding music ever could. I'll tell you what happened at the memorial service, because the final surprise Grandma left behind wasn't written in a diary. It was written in how we chose to remember her, and it changed everything. Thank you for listening to Grandma's story. If this touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe because some stories aren't loud. They're lasting.